And here we go with part three, taking a TEK and making and creating a learning objective from that TEK. So with this particular TEK, the three up there means third grade. So it's a third grade level TEK. And this is often what you'll see. You'll see like a big number and then a subletter and then maybe subletter again. And so what I'm looking for is this beginning part up here kind of gives you context, this part. But as we drill down, this is really kind of the one piece of it that you're looking at for your lesson plan. So up here, we know we're talking about different types of text and genres, and then it drills down, it tells you the different types of things that it's actually looking for in this big meaty one. So I'm not looking for you to take this big meaty one. I'm looking for you to take this one and turn it into a learning objective. So we know that we're dealing with informational text, and we're trying to get students to recognize characteristics and structures of informational text. Specifically, we're looking for them about what does this mean? It means the central idea with supporting evidence. So we're looking for a student to maybe find the central idea with supporting evidence from an informational text. Okay, so recognize, again, is not one of those measurable verbs. So we have to figure out a verb that kind of looks like recognize, which is more at the understand level. The central idea with supporting evidence. So what could that possibly look like? I have some samples over here for you. So here's one example. The students will describe the central idea of chapter 21 of the first days of school with 3 sentences of supporting evidence. So we've said what the informational text was. We used a verb that's at the same level of Bloom's, and we also included the supporting evidence. Here's another one that you could use maybe, because this one actually is probably not age appropriate for third grade, huh? Since this is a book that we use here. So maybe a more age-appropriate one would be, the students will describe the central idea of Times Kids magazine. Article space is awesome, including 4 supporting details. So that would be a good example of how we're taking that TEK and turning it into a learning objective. So going to the next one, here's a 6th grade TEK about geography. And so here in this TEK, we see we have to identify and explain the geographic factors responsible for the location of economic activities in places and regions. So that's a mouthful. We have to figure out what are those geographic factors, maybe what location, and we have to narrow down between identify and explain. So if we come back over and we look here, the students will illustrate the differences in the amount of economic activity due to the mountain ranges versus river locations. So if we think about, did it satisfy that? Well, it is talking about economic activity. It is referring to geographic regions like mountain ranges or river locations. Illustrate the differences. If we go back, explain, I think that's okay. If they explain some of the factors, I think that matches. Here's where we just use that one. Students will explain the geographic factors of the rise of the Great Britain powerhouse. And so this is the economic part and the geographic factors that influenced it. And our next one, we have a science high school TEK. And so this one is talking about astronomy. Describe and explain the historical origins of the perceived patterns of constellations and the role of constellations in ancient and modern navigation. So to me, that's a lot going on. There's patterns of constellations that may take a while to do, or the role of it in ancient modern navigation. That would definitely take some time to go over and teach that in a lesson. So again, we have describe and explain. So we've got 2 different verbs going, and we have to narrow it down to 1 verb. So here we have one. The students will explain the role of the North Star of ancient Scandinavian oceanic maps. So we use the word explain. We've got talking about how it was used for navigation in a specific location. Another one about trade routes. The students will explain the role of constellations in the trade routes. But then here we have one on constellations. The students will describe the history and origins of Orion, Cassiopeia, and Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, and some of the other constellations. So each of these objectives would be okay to meet these TEKs.